This episode of the Adventure Jogger is brought to you by Olivier Galeman, Ashley Says, and Mary Moffat, and the rest of the Patreon supporters, and of course you, the listener. Thanks for listening. The Adventure Jogger, a podcast about trail and ultra running. Meet fascinating runners from the front, middle, and back of the pack, sharing inspiring and funny stories about life and running. Running should be fun, and so should running podcasts. I'm your host, Stephen Kornhaus, and this is the Adventure Jogger. Well, on this episode of the Adventure Jogger podcast, I've got a gentleman who seems like he runs just about every race on the East Coast. It seems like every weekend I see a picture on Facebook from Matt with a new race that he's run. And so I'm excited to have Matt Kornegay back on the podcast, or on the podcast. For those of you that don't know, we tried to record about a couple months ago and had some audio issues, but we got that all sorted out now, we hope. So glad to have you back on, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad I could be on a 2025 edition here.
There we go. There we go. The first episode I'm recording of 2025. It
Yay.
won't be the first air, but the first one recording.
Sounds good to me.
What did you have? Speaking of, did you have a good New Year?
Yeah, pretty good. Getting older now, so it was a little less eventful than last year. Last year we went out and I live outside of Charlotte, so we went and explored the big city, and that was an adventure. Let's just say.
Yeah.
I heard, and this was after the fact, they actually moved it to a baseball stadium there, but 5 people apparently got shot last year
Oh my
around
goodness.
the area we were at, and I had no idea. So this year we decided to stay in house. So,
I tell you what, like, man, I was there's just so much going on over New Year's, different events and cars driving through people and nonsense. I was telling my wife, like, I was just, man, I just assume stay home these days, and it's crazy out there.
you just don't ever know. You really have to keep your head on a swivel for sure.
Right. Well, anyway, let's talk about some running. So
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's get into the story of Matt. Like, how did you find running, or did running find you?
Yeah, so I'll try to keep it short because I'm a person that likes to get into the details and the weeds a little too much. So I'll say back, I think it was 2016, I believe. A friend of mine, a good buddy, we both have similar interests, and yeah, so I was noticing that he had been losing some weight, and I didn't really realize like what he was doing other than he was running, something that I didn't think I had wanted any part of. And he was using an app called MyFitnessPal, and so I had previously about a decade before, been in the gym, and then I ended up getting into physical labor, construction, and stuff like that. So the last thing I wanted to do was get back into the gym or run. And anyway, I noticed, as I was approaching my 40s, that I started to gain some extra weight that was not what I wanted.
Yep.
In some areas that my face, I noticed it first, but then it wasn't until I really did a waistline check. I had to wear some slacks for a wedding or something, and I pulled out those 32s that have been in the drawer for quite some time, and they did not fit. Remember them. They were a lot more snug, and
Yep.
I pulled out my denim, and people don't understand that denim stretches over time, and you don't know it. And I was like, well, my jeans are fine. And then I pulled out the measuring tape and realized I had went from what I thought was a 32 waist to almost a 36. And
Oh, wow.
I was pushing 165-ish pounds, where before the last time I remembered I was at like 145. So I'm like, where did this 20 pounds come from? And I didn't realize it until I started looking at some old pictures that I had. It looked like somebody Botoxed to my body, So, it was like a puffy fish, and I'm thinking, this isn't good. And so that began the MyFitnessPal journey, where basically it just boiled down to counting calories.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of everything in moderation, so to speak. When you get full, just stop. And it was working. Weight was coming off. I was hitting the gym. I was not doing cardio, which no one likes to do. And so, but my friend, his weight just kept coming off. He changed his eating habits and everything. And my eating habits didn't really change much, but I did try to get in a little more cardio. And So anyway, I started out with a couch to 5K plan, just right on the iPhone, and ran that whole thing on a treadmill.
Oh, wow.
Signed up for my first 5K, and it didn't happen. Like Hurricane Matthew, believe it or not, ended up coming and pushing the race off, and I had another camping trip scheduled for that weekend, so that didn't happen. So I postponed it to the following year, which was 2017. And that's when I ran my first 5K, and I hated it. It was in January. It was 27 degrees. My feet
Ooh.
felt like I was running on cinder blocks. They went numb, but I won first in my age group. Woo! How do you
Oh,
do
wow.
that?
That's
And
awesome.
my friend, he was running the half marathon that day, and I told him, he was like, "Well, just chalk it up because that usually never happens that you win your first race, in your age group." And it was a small race, but I was like, "Well, if it's my only win, I'll take it." And so that kind of started my running journey, and he was always a step ahead of me. And I would run my 5K, he was in a 10K, and then I was in a 10K, he was in a half. And when I ran my first marathon, I think he was close to doing his first Ironman, but I
Oh,
never
wow.
jumped onto the triathlon scene. But anyway, we ran a lot of races together. We ran our first trail races together. We ran our first 50 together, our first 100 together. So it was, that was kind of like how everything got started, was my friend Chris. So
Wow, that's pretty
yeah.
awesome. So he's your true your running buddy. You guys
Yeah,
share,
which
like
is
share a lot of
crazy.
miles.
And we knew each other from our teenage years, and
Oh,
we
wow.
crossed paths. We both were skateboarders, and both ended up falling into some not good scenes back in those days. Is that we both went our separate ways, and somehow we reconvened. You know, 20 years later, and
Wow.
we've been friends ever. Good friends ever since. He was a groomsman in my wedding. So yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So
That's pretty
yeah,
awesome.
we share a lot. It's
Yeah.
he's not in the running scene as much anymore. I think he kind of got burnt out for a while, and so I miss seeing him at the races.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back and ask, how tall are you?
5'8".
Okay, because like when I see all your pictures on Facebook, like I always like you look like a tall dude. Like
I'm a
all your
skinny dude.
pictures. See, all your pictures, I would have thought you were about my size, like 6'2", 6'3". Like you
No,
look bigger.
whenever you see me next to people, I'm like the little small guy. I'm like, man, I wish I was a little bit bigger, but
When
whatever.
you said your weight, that's yeah. When you said your weight, I was like, that doesn't sound like much because I thought you were taller.
Well,
But okay.
yeah, when you're 165 and you're only 5'8", it's not a healthy weight. And I mean, I'm probably 150, well, 155 now, so I've filled back in a little bit, but I'm 45, so now that all
Yeah.
that easy runoff weight doesn't run off so much
Uh.
anymore. So unfortunately.
Yeah. I'm feeling that myself right now. Like tomorrow is actually my 41st birthday, and I'm
Oh
feeling
wow.
like not being able to run, because of my hip and everything. I'm like starting to see some weight in places I don't want to, and I'm trying to be in the gym. It's like, oh, it just doesn't want to go away.
Well, and then plus you're at the holidays. I mean, it's like every time you turn
Right.
around, there's something bad sitting on the
Exactly.
counter
Oh, here's a
waiting.
pecan pie.
Yeah, here's a Christmas cookies, a pumpkin roll, or whatever.
Exactly.
And that's I want to say, my New Year's resolution is trying to make better, healthier eating decisions.
Right.
And I am a true addict of sugar, and I'll raise my hand and
Yep.
say, "Yep, I'm a sugarholic for real." It's just I can
What's your
feel it's
go-to?
got me. What's my go-to? Seafood, because if I see it, I'm going to eat it. I mean, I don't really have. When I say I'm cheesecake. I mean, I'm a sucker
Okay.
for a cheesecake, and those are probably the most unhealthiest things you can eat. Probably a pecan
Yeah.
pie. It's not
Yeah.
good, but you
My
know,
my my go-to is probably like gummy bears. Like if I had a bag of gummy bears, I would just always be filling my mouth with gummy bears.
Well,
But
I'll
I got
say this:
it.
I'm okay. Like I do have, Sour Patch Kids stuff like that. I'm okay on the straight sugar stuff. Like when unless I'm running an ultra and I'm eating like the goo chews and stuff like that. That's just basically straight, glucose sugar.
Right.
I'm okay. I don't crave that necessarily. It's bakery items. Like I'm a sucker for bakery, and if I go in there
Okay.
and I see
Like the
You know,
pastries.
the pastries, oh my gosh, the carbs and the
Yes.
cheese. I could never be. If I was a baker, I'd be 300 pounds. There's no doubt. So, I that's a good thing that I don't frequent those very often.
Yeah. So
But
you and your buddy Chris got into,
yeah,
or he got you into running a bit, and you said you did your first trail race together. So what was your first trail race?
first trail race was Single Track Maniac, and that was in Virginia on mountain bike trails in the rain.
Okay.
So
And how what was the distance on that?
it was a 50K.
Oh, your first trail race was a 50K.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
No, no.
Awesome.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I take that back. No, 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 no. No. My first trail race was 8 miles. So,
8 miles. Okay.
yes, yeah, okay,
All
yeah.
right.
I'm
And
mistaken. My first ultra, but that's technically not true either. We'll get to that. But yeah, my first trail race was in Greensboro, and I'm in North Carolina. So it was around a lake, and my friend had I think he had ran it the previous year. I think it was called Triple Lakes. It might have, maybe, but anyway, he got me out there for an 8 miler, and we froze to death out there. It was like the lake effect, but not in Michigan.
yeah.
It was the wind just whistling across. It was a winter day, and you were literally ran right next to the water the whole time, and it was an out and back. And I mean, I couldn't feel anything, and I was just so ready to be done. And when you finished, it was like nobody was there. It was a very small little local race, and it was like you run through the finish line, you grab your stuff, and you're like, all right, let's go home. So
Yeah.
that was it. But yeah, 8 miles was my first trail distance, and then I moved up to 10 miles. After that was Medoc marathons, and
Okay.
by the time I got to the level where I could run the marathon, they quit having it. So
Oh
that
no.
that took away that event for me in the marathon distance. So I had to go up to the 50K after that.
So were you doing any like road races as well during this time, or were you like strictly doing races on trail?
Yeah, so I started off as a road runner. I think a lot of people do, unless you're just naturally in the environment of having trails in your backyard. Trails were a drive for me to get to. Um, I mean, from what I can remember, I think it was a minimum of 45 minutes to get to a trail
Oh
anywhere.
wow.
And I was in Greenville, North Carolina, so flatlander, so no trails and no hills. It was beach, East Coast. So having to drive to Raleigh or somewhere like that, or Rocky Mount or Hollister, that's where the Medoc trail race was, and that it really wasn't hilly. It just had like one little mountain. It was like a rock that stuck out of the ground, like 600 feet elevation. I think it was like maybe a couple hundred feet gain. But that was still, an hour drive just to get there.
Oh
And
wow.
so either it was that or mountain bike trails. And I mean, you're not going to get so much elevation out of those, just a lot of up and downs. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I had, and so it was road. It was country roads, and I ran a lot of half marathons. I did the Virginia race, the J&A race series, which is the crawling crab, and the Norfolk half marathon, and they have one in March, St. Patrick's Day. I can't remember what that one. Oh, the March Madness. Anyway, it was one of those. But I did that whole series, and did my first marathon was Richmond Marathon, and then I ran the Wilmington Marathon. Um, and I just kind of got burnt out. Like, I was tired of roads, and when I found trail running, I was like, "This is it. This is where I'm supposed to be."
Yeah. Did you get burnt out on the the ever the quest for a PR and chasing splits pretty much with the road scene? Kind of get burnt out on that.
Oh yeah, it was always about trying to break 20-minute 5Ks, and I never, unfortunately, never broke 20 minutes. Even though I know that doesn't sound fast, when you're seeing cross country,
That's pretty darn fast though.
when you're seeing cross country guys running 15, 16 minute 5Ks, it's like it's
It's
just,
ridiculous.
because I realized that when you get to that level, like every second, every half second matters. Like that's a minute off of a PR in a distance that short. That's a huge, because
Oh yeah.
you only got a couple of splits. So you're only
Right.
able to drop so many. I mean, otherwise you're dropping 30, 40 seconds a split. I'm like, I can't do that,
Yeah.
without getting a trainer. And then I had friends, going after the BQ, and I had a desire, and I'm thinking, when I realized what my half marathon time was, what my marathon time is, I said I would have to keep this same time and be 70 years old after BQ. So I'm thinking there's no way that I'm going to be able to. I mean, I just don't feel like I have that physical ability, even if I had a trainer. And I think some people say, "Oh, you can achieve whatever you're training for if you have someone to get you there," and that may be possible. I think there is some natural limitations that I would have to work extra hard to
Yeah.
just get that one thing. And after a while, just kind of like got burnt out on the repetition of roads. I could get lost on a country road, but then when the car whizzes by and about like almost kills you, you realize you can't zone out on a road on the
Right.
shoulder of a road at any given time. I don't care how desolate it seems. You just can't do that. And so,
Especially on country roads too, because even more than cars, sometimes you got to worry about dogs.
oh yeah, that I've been chased by many, and of course the time that you forget the pepper spray or whatever is the time that the dog almost eats your leg off.
Yep.
And it's usually the farm dogs that are out there, guarding the farm, and they think your leg's a chicken, and so
Yeah.
they decide they want to chase it. And so anyway, yeah, I think just the repetition, just the pounding, the cadence, boom, 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 and over again, and then you get overuse injuries like crazy.
Oh
And
yeah.
when I found trail running, it it alleviated a lot of that, because there's so much change that your body, yes, it's going to get tired, but it doesn't get that overuse injury that, yeah,
Right.
would I rather risk stumbling, twisting an ankle, probably getting seriously injured, or getting like runner's knee or IT band issue? I don't know. I think I'd rather risk tripping and falling on some rocks for whatever reason. I call me
Right.
crazy, but I
Yeah.
guess it just takes a different type of person
Yeah.
to want to do trails over road.
So you did the marathon thing for a little bit in the roads, but then you did that first 50K.
Yep.
And how did that first one go for you? Was it just, you had already been training for the marathon, so was it like just a few more miles, or did you have some low patches?
Well, here's the crazy thing. So, actually, my first ultra race was not a 50K, it was a 50 miler. I
Oh
actually
wow.
skipped the 50K distance. I did do a 50K training run on a greenway. So, I did run a 50K, but it wasn't an official race. But me and my friend Chris decided, well, let's just say he decided, and I jumped off the bridge with him to do Badwater 51 50 miler in Bald Head Island,
Wait,
and
is that
that
the one
was,
that's running the sand?
yes.
Oh my
Unfor-
gosh. Oh,
let's just say that was a one and done for me. Some people go back to it every year, and I guess they've drank the Kool-Aid, but 12 miles on the around the island, and then 36, 38 miles on the beach. And
oh my gosh.
let's just say there's sand that gets in places you would never expect it to get. And running on a camber, when you watch the tide come in and leave twice in a day, yeah, let's just say that I'll take a trail any day over
Yeah.
that. And it wasn't a cheap race either. So I got the buck. That was my first buckle, even though it wasn't 100. So
Yeah. It's funny, like you mentioned you running on the camber of the beach. Like everybody has this, well, I don't know about everybody. I had this vision in my mind going to the beach on vacation, like, oh, I want to go run on the beach. That's gonna be so great. It was horrible. Like I didn't even make it a mile on the beach before I left the beach and went up on the little boardwalk beside it where it was flat and hard. And I wasn't on a camber and like in sand. So I could not imagine 36, 38 miles in sand. That's
yeah, and you only had two aid stations. You had one as you left the area that you hit the sand, and then you ran into 20-mile-an-hour headwind. We
oh my
filmed it,
gosh.
and when you broke out on that sand, and it's on island, so it goes across the sandbar. Well, they have a 14-hour cutoff, because if you don't make it back you get cut off from the island. So there you can't pass it. The water
Legit
comes up
cutoff.
too deep. Yeah. So you're running out. You're running. People are out. They've got their fishing rods out, and you're running under their lines. And you can choose to either run in the packed sand up into the soft sand, which is way up in the dunes almost, or run in the water. Well, you don't want to run in the water. So you run on the packed sand out, but on the way back, the tide has come in. So then you're running in Jeep tracks trying to stay on packed stuff. And it literally, every time you take a step, that your energy is just pulled from you. And I found out that I was on a trip to Panama City in Florida, and I was training, and they had a causeway, and then they had the sand. And I was like, I'm gonna go for a beach run. Everybody talks about running barefoot on the beach. Don't ever
Yeah,
do
don't do it.
that.
Don't do it. No.
It like blistered my feet. There was
Yes.
no, I mean, it was like sandpaper. I made it a mile and a half and turned around and came back. By the time I got back, I put shoes on and I hit the road. So I just, some people love it, but there's no desire for me to run on the beach.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So one and done. Like how did it go for you overall though? I mean, obviously you got the sand issues and all that, but did you finish it okay and enjoy it overall?
I mean, I could have probably finished it a little bit faster. I think I finished I said 14-hour cutoff. Yeah, it was 14. I think I finished 11:30 or just under 12. I think I could have pushed it because I mean, first place did it in like 6 hours and some change.
Oh my
I mean,
goodness.
they were just like flying. But yeah, I mean, mainly I was there for my buddy Chris. We were both like back and forth. I had some low issues. He was peppy, and then when he had low issues, I was peppy, and we literally ran across the finish line same time. I mean,
That's awesome.
That was the whole point, was to finish it together. And I think we both came in like 11:30 and some change or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it was a good experience, but it wasn't something I would do again.
Right. Yeah.
I'd rather run a 50-mile. Actually, I'd probably rather run a 100-mile than trail run than run that again.
Yeah.
But that was a one and done.
Well, since you had skipped the 50K distance and went straight to 50, did you do a couple more 50-ish mile, or did you go back and do some 50Ks, or what was next for you?
No, the 50-miler was kind of like that for a while. I can't remember when I went back and did anything further than that, but then it was like I was doing 50Ks like it seemed like every time I turned around. So Single Track Maniac, which was on mountain bike trails, that was my first 50K trail race, but my first 50K mountain race was Grayson Highlands, and
okay.
That was kind of like the horses and all that, and I got my picture, and that it was all that was cracked up to be. And then I just ran the 50-miler this past year, and it was like that wasn't good.
So, oh, really?
It was like rainy and foggy, and it was just kind of like you did, being in that Mount Rogers area in Virginia. It's literally a 50-50 chance of whether it's going to be great or not, and this was the year it was not great. Or last year. So,
yeah, because you always see those pictures look beautiful where it's just great views. And then I did see some pictures from this year's race where it was so foggy and misty, you couldn't see what looked like maybe 100 feet in front of you.
Yeah. If you were in some cases, it was like 20 feet. It literally was like, you could barely see the trail. And I'm like, people were eating it left and right. And I ran out the gate, because there's a section of road. I mean, it's a good mile or so. And if you don't make it out the gate and get to the trailhead, you're going to bottleneck. It's going to be a conga line for miles. And
right.
I'm a back front packer. So, I'm not going to be up front, but sometimes I try to run with the front people and just let people pass me, just to get out front of the people that are probably going to slow up. And I'm probably the one they're complaining about too. So, but I'll try to hold my own for a little bit. And I was up there running with probably the top 15, and I'm thinking, a 7-minute pace, this is not sustainable for a mountain 50K. What am I doing? 50-miler. What am I doing up here? So I pulled it back, but I was able to make it into that first trailhead before the conga line bunched up, and then it was all hands on deck, because people were hitting the ground left and right on those rocks. They were so slippery.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, let's go back a little ways. And so after you did some 50Ks, 50-miler, like what was your first distance over 50 miles?
That would be the Uwari 100K
Okay.
in 2019. So I mean, some people progress faster. You know, they're like, I'm doing my first 100 mile. I've only been running the year. I'm like, yeah, that's. I did the typical, you know, half marathon my first year, marathon my next year. You know, I didn't jump into it too. I didn't want to get burned out. I knew
Right.
with anything new that people, you know, and I have a very addictive personality. When I do something, I'm like 100% in. And I knew that, you know, with this, I needed to, if I wanted it to sustain me and it wasn't just some pinnacle that I was going to reach and then quit and just be another, you know, hobby that I do occasionally, I wanted it to be a lifestyle. And that was the thing, is because I knew that it was part of my weight loss and being healthy, even, you know, despite the people, oh, you're going to mess your knees up. You're going to, you know, well, I can do a lot of other things. It's going to
Right.
probably, you
Yeah.
know, hurt me worse than, you know, going out and running and, you know, staying in shape. So I knew that this was a long-term thing. So I didn't want to burn out and do every event, you know, and I talk to people all the time. I'm like, you know, just don't overdo it. And I mean, if you think it's something you can sustain, go for it. But I know me. And so I literally tried to do the stepping stone, and I was staying as far away from a 100 miler that I could. I
Yeah.
had no desire to do 100 miles. And, you know, of course, what are friends for? To walk you up to the edge of that ledge and jump off hand in hand. And that's what I eventually did. But yeah, but Chris and I both did Uwari 100K together, and like I said, we pretty much did everything um, up from a 50K. I mean, when I did my train run 50K, we both ran on the Greenway together. We trained together, and so everything from a 50K on up to 100 we did together.
Wow.
So
That's so awesome.
the marathon he got me on because he had, you know, 6 months on me, but and I've never done an Ironman, but yeah, so Uwari 100K, and it was during a monsoon. It was a tropical storm, and it was a lovely 18 hours. So
Oh my goodness.
yeah, and
Yeah, Uari's pretty difficult too, right? There's a fair amount of elevation gain in that, right?
yeah, people don't realize Uwari is a special place. I have a love hate relationship with it. There's no views there. You're not going to go out there. I mean, if you've ever heard, you know, uh, of what's it called? Oh my gosh, where Cruel Jewel is. What is that? In Georgia,
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking
the
about.
trail.
The Duncan Ridge Trail.
Yeah, Duncan Ridge. So if you've ever heard of that trail, that's a smaller, that's a bigger version of Uwari. You don't have the mountains, and you don't but you have the same amount of views, zero. There's no views there. It's supposedly some of the oldest mountainous areas in the country. And because, you know, as you go out further west, you know, even Wyoming, like the and you know, the Rockies and the what is it, the Tetons and San Juans, I think it is. Those mountains, they're steeper, they're sharper as you go out west, and so the ones on the East Coast, as we know, they've deteriorated over tens of thousands of years. And Uwari supposedly had some of the tallest in the country. They were supposedly up in the same range as those areas, and as far as height wise, and you can see it because just when you're on some of those climbs, you can look up, and if you follow the trajectory, like the horizon line, and you look up, you can imagine those just going into the sky. And then they just roll off, you know. So it's like, but it's just the tagline for the race is simply unrelenting, and it's because you can never get in a groove out there. You're either going up or going down. There's a couple of flat places that you run by the creek, but you can never just get in a smooth groove. Your heart rate's going to be all over the place, and so yeah, it will people, and it's very technical. It's rocky, it's rooty, and you know, anybody that runs out there will have a whole new sense of like respect for that area. And that's where I'm an hour from there, so that's where I train. I love it. I can go out there, I can do a 20-mile loop and never see anybody. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, and then I can go to Crowder's Mountain and I can see, you know, 1,000 people on a weekend, and it's like, yeah, I'll go to Uwari.
Yeah. That's what I've seen with that place is it looks like it's a I've never been there, but from what I've seen, it looks like it's a like the green tunnel. Like you're always under the tree canopy. You don't have those views. Now, is it you mentioned it's like the Duncan Ridge Trail. Is it similar how the DRT does not like really use switchbacks? They just go straight up and straight down, or are there switchbacks in URI?
No, it's straight up, straight down. There's no
Yeah.
switchbacks there. Yeah, it's like when you start to hit a climb, your heart rate's going to go up, and then then you're running down the other side of it, and then you're back. Then you're in a low area valley, and then you're climbing back up. And yeah, it's there's no switchbacks there. I mean,
Yeah.
but the thing is the biggest climb over probably I think some of the longest ones. I think there's one area you can get like 100 and I've in this area that I run. It's I mean it's 50,000 acres. I mean it covers like 3 counties, so you
Oh,
can
wow.
like legit get lost out there. It's where the special forces train. It's huge. And anyway, if you don't know where you're going, you can get lost and never get back. But anyway, there's a figure eight loop out there that's a 20-mile loop, and you get I think 3,600 feet of gain in that section. Um, Almost 4,000. Yeah, 3,800. So 3,800 feet of gain. But you're talking 3,800 feet of not climbing more than 80 feet vertical feet. So
Wow.
you want to talk about adding up. This isn't like going up, to Mount Mitchell or somewhere and climbing like
Right.
1,500 feet. This is like up and down, and it's crazy. And I've never run a 20-mile loop out there and was like, oh, that was easy. It's always beat me up about halfway through. I'm thinking I should have went for the 12-mile loop, not the 20.
Yeah.
And but yeah, the longest I think it's like 3/4 of a mile, and I think it climbs like 150 feet in 3/4 of
Oh,
a mile.
wow.
So
That's
it's
not much at
short,
all.
but it will
Yeah.
get I mean, it'll get your heart, at least mine, it'll get it up there high because there's no
Wow.
switchbacks. It's
Yeah.
just a steady climb.
Simply
Um,
unrelenting, like the
yep,
tagline of the
simply
race.
unrelenting. And yeah, I mean, I've seen it chew elites up. I mean, but yeah, I mean, to do a sub 2,400 out there, I think it's less than 5 people that's ever done it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty serious. That's pretty serious. Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
So to do that, yeah, it's an elite group of people that's done it. But their 100 miler has a 36-hour cutoff, so it's yeah,
What's the
it's tough.
elevation gain in the 100 miler? Do you know?
20,000 feet.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty darn
yeah,
good.
yeah. I think in the
Wow.
100K, I had somewhere like 13,000 feet in the
Wow.
100K. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good for
So
100K too, man.
and
Wow.
it's loops, so you get to know what you're in for.
Right.
So yeah,
Wow.
but
Well, what after that, like how long did you go before you did attempt your first 100-mile race?
my first 100 was in 2020. So
Okay.
it was the next year.
And which race was that?
So yeah, it was in 2020 because COVID canceled my first 100. It was actually planned. Actually, it was 2021.
Okay.
2020. Yeah, it was 2021. COVID canceled my first. Yeah, because 2020 is when COVID hit, and
Right.
I was signed up for Umstead.
Okay.
That's an iconic, one that everybody has probably run at one time or another. It's not anything about the course; it's about the event because the course it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's not a great course. It's just gravel road. It's not. I wouldn't even really call it a trail race. But it's been around for 40 years, so it's an iconic, and it's a Western qualifier. So
Right.
that's kind of where it's got its staple from. But yeah, so the thing with that race is it's a lottery. I usually don't fare very well in lotteries, and the lottery was going on during the Blue Ridge Relay, which I've run 3 years, and being in the mountains, running 208 miles from Grayson Highlands to Asheville, North Carolina, and you're running legs. And I've run an ultra team, which is 6 men. I've run actually two ultras. I've run a 4-man a couple of years ago, which I'll never do that again. I've run a 9-man, which was way slow, but it was, you don't have, you have bad service. And with the lottery, if you don't get in, you get another every, I think 5 minutes or 15 minutes, you have to sign in and you get a code again and you got to plug that code in. Well, So you're basically babysitting this lottery until you get in, until they
Yeah.
fill up. And I think it fills up with 200 people. And I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I didn't try. Well, then my friend Chris gets in, and I'm like, great, dude, you're going to run your first 100 without me. I didn't even, there's no way I could have got in. And so they have a thing called a second chance lottery. And you basically just email them and say, hey, put me in the second chance lottery. And I got in. I was like, hey, it's meant to be. We're going to run our first 100 together.
There you
And
go.
so what did we do? We trained together. We, did everything together. COVID hits and shuts down the whole thing.
Uh,
And it was like, I mean, we were doing night training runs, running at 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, we were doing everything. And I mean, I don't know if it was for a good thing or not, because leading into that race, when you're when you're tapering, things just seem to fall apart. And you can do great during training, hitting 70-mile weeks, and in 3 weeks, and then you're in your 3 week taper, and then suddenly you got IT bans, and it's like, what's going on here? So I ended up having some runners, I guess some IT, band issues going in, thinking about going into it. And I was like, well, maybe it was for a good thing, because, that race beats you up. And I ended up going out and running like 50 miles on my own, like just on country roads, using gas stations as, um, aid stops. And, I was like, I got to do something. Some people ran 100 miles in their neighborhood. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm not doing that. So I did not get to run that 100 that year. So I deferred it to the next year. Well, they ended up, and I ended up running, I think, Looking Glass 50 or something. I did something later that year. And so anyway, about, I don't know, 3 weeks to a month out, they still had not secured their permit, Umstead.
oh,
And
wow.
I'm thinking, okay, we've already deferred once. You took some money for, to pay for the, whatever you had invested in it. And then we've got to pay the difference and then try this again. Well, then my friend, that's a local to the Raleigh area, decided to start the MST 100, which is 100 miles up and down the Falls Lake uh, area out there, which is up and down, up and down. It's flat supposedly, but it's about, he said, about 8,000 feet of gain, and it come out to be about 10,000. And so, me and my friend Chris decided to, instead of, go for Umstead, because like I said, the event is all about the atmosphere, the support, the aid stations. Well, with COVID, it was like a skeleton crew. Everything was Ziploc baggies, pre-made. You could only have one crew member
Oh, wow.
around you at a time. So there was no, congregating. You couldn't, it was like you were isolated. And so I'm like, well, that's the whole point of the event, is for the camaraderie, the whole atmosphere. And I'm like, let's get a refund and take our money and get into the MST 100. And so that's what we did. So that was the first 100, and it was fine. My wife was able to crew me because it was an out and back, and you know, you got to just have somebody at the same aid stops, as you were coming back. So it helped. But
Now,
yeah, that was my first one.
is it MST for is it the Mountain to Sea Trail?
Yeah, it's still part of the Mountain to Sea Trail. It's just I guess Raleigh is central. So it's the central part of it, coming from the mountains to the
Okay.
coast. So yeah.
And so did you run
it
from
did
the
follow that.
mountain towards the coast and then turn around and go back?
Yeah, so where we were at, Falls of the Lake, it just basically zigzags, the whole side of the lake, and it was out 15 miles, back 15. That was the 50K. So they had a 50K. And then you go out 30, whatever the difference is, 30 something miles, 35 miles, I think it is, and then back 35 miles. And
Ah,
the
okay.
only issue with that race is, depending on the rain and depending on when they release the dam, it floods.
Oh,
And
no.
so, literally, a couple of weeks before, we were training out there on those trails, and there is a footbridge that runs across a whole section of lake that's literally, it looks like it's floating on the lake. There's no handrails. It's just a footbridge, and it's crazy. It was underwater. You couldn't see it. So I think it was last year or the year before, they literally, people were out there and the bridge was underwater about 6 to 8 inches. So it looked like they were walking on water. It was insane, some of the pictures. But yeah, if you're out there training on that, some of the hand bridges or the foot bridges that you have to use, it's impassable. So we, you know, there was areas you had to turn around. They had to adjust the course. But I mean, the first year was, the full course was open, but it's a muddy race, because of that. So,
Yeah, that would be
but yeah.
challenging if you're running on 6 inches of water over a footbridge.
Yeah, I mean, because if you step off, you just. I mean, it's literally
Right.
like it's barely wide enough for two people to pass. So if you step off, there's no rails. I mean, you're in the water,
Oh,
So
wow.
it's a few of my friends ran it during that time, and I'm like, have fun.
Yeah, you know what they got into.
I'm not gonna do it. So
Right. Well, how
anyway,
did your first 100 go for you, though? Did it, I mean, overall go okay, or?
yeah, so I think I finished in 28 hours and 30 minutes or something like that. I did finish in front of my friend Chris. I think he was a couple hours behind me. He had he was wearing some new socks and ended up blistering his feet. He told me,
Ooh,
don't ever put on the new pair of socks before 100, no matter what model you think they are. He's like, one, you got to wash them and then you got to break them in, just like shoes. And
yeah.
it literally because the fabric was new, it blistered a huge chunk of his foot. I mean, he lost it went all the way down to, I don't know how many layers, but it was
Oh,
bad. And he
gosh.
put him out for like over a month. Like he could barely
Oh,
walk.
wow.
Yeah,
That's a serious blister.
and that was 50 miles in. And so he
Ooh.
ran 50 on it. And it was bad. It was like the whole ball of his foot was gone. It
Oh.
was so needless to say, once he ran that, he did not run. Um, you know what? I don't know if I don't think he's run another 100 since then.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't believe he has.
Okay.
I think he signed up for no business. He didn't run it. And then he signed up from Pinhoti, and I think he passed on that one. So I think that was it, just because, like I said, he kind of backslid on some of his running habits and it got burnt out on it. And just getting back to that level and the training, and then he's got, family and everything. It wasn't
Yeah.
sustainable for him. So
Yeah. It's a big time commitment for sure.
it very big. Yeah.
So after the MST 100, did you go into another 100, pretty quickly, or did you take a step back and run some other races, or what was your path from there?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think. After that, I did go into, I think I went back to some 100Ks. Um, Let me think. I think 50K is my favorite distance. But so I ran a bunch of those, which is crazy because they just all bleed together. But then I went into a no business 100. So 20. So yeah, 2022. Actually, did I run no business the same year? See, it's 2024. I didn't run it this past year. I ran it 2 consecutive years.
Okay.
Have you done no business? You've done
Yeah, I've
no
done it
business,
both.
right?
I've done it both directions. Yeah.
What year? What was your first year doing it?
2020. I did
Okay,
it 2020, the COVID year, and then I did it in 2023.
I think I may have done it 21 and 22. I didn't do it.
I feel like I remember seeing you out there in 21 because that's where my wife ran it that year, and I feel like I remember seeing you out there.
Which direction was that?
That would have been no, clockwise, I think, right?
Was
Let's see,
that
what do
the
we
year? Is that the year the Beavers dammed up the horse trail and they had to reroute it?
Yes. Or no, that was 22. That was 22, I think.
Okay. Well, I ran it the year before because when your wife ran it, that was my second year.
Yeah. Let's
Because
see,
I
20,
remember.
24, they just ran it counterclockwise. And so 23 would have been clockwise. Yeah.
23 was clockwise. So that puts Blue Heron. I ran it the year that Blue Heron was in the dark. That was my
Okay.
second year.
Okay.
So that
That
would,
would have been
yeah.
counterclockwise, I
So that would
think.
have put Blue Heron at mile 70 in the mile 70 range, I
Right.
think, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So I ran it that year and the year before that.
Okay.
So whenever those two. So I ran it back to back.
Gotcha.
That was my second and third 100. And, right now, I was looking at going to Pinhoti, but I guess we'll get into my upcoming races. But anyway, yeah, so That's
What
the
did you think of No Business? They
oh,
ran
I
it
loved
twice,
it.
both directions.
I loved it. I mean, Brian and Shelly, they're awesome. I mean, what
Oh
they do
yeah.
there. When I went there, because I ran my friend's inaugural 100, and I was like, well, he's a great guy. And let's just say an inaugural 100, there's a lot to be net done. And there was some
Right.
confusion on some of the signage. And because you had so many people coming out and back, there was just not clear. So when I went to No Business, I'm like, this is what 100 is supposed to be like. It was like they had it. And it being one big loop, I
Yes,
mean,
it's
you
so
never saw
amazing.
the same thing twice other than Blue Heron area. And that was just because it was a little circle, around the river there. But yeah, when I went to that race, that was the one that set the bar for me as
Yeah.
far as what I expected out of a 100-mile race.
Same here.
So
They put on such a great race.
anything that falls below that, I may or may not go back to again.
Right.
So, but yeah, so yeah, No Business 100, definitely one of my favorites. And then I ran, let's see, Grindstone.
Okay.
I ran Grindstone in 23. That's what it was.
And
So
that's the year they had a ton of rain that year, right?
that's the year that UTMB took it over.
Right.
And let's just say I got in before that happened, that transition happened. So, when I found out, I was like, okay, this is a good thing, right? Well, I'm not going to bash UTMB. Well,
Oh, you can
maybe I
bash them all
will.
you want. You can bash them all you want.
Because not a fan of Iron Man anyway. And after
Right.
they kind of just sold out, like my take, I know a lot of people do UTMB, but the commercialization, one of the reasons I got out of running road marathons is because it's so commercialized. I mean, you're out there running with thousands of people. You got the photo thing. They charge you for every like photo that's blurred out and you don't even know. And
Right.
anyway, you get there and it's like you already got my wallet on the registration. Now you're trying to get it through this money funnel product line, and that's exactly what it was. I went
Yep.
in, I think his name was Clark Zealand, I think it is, who was the race director of that, and he was still kind of heading it up. But when they changed the whole course, they tripled the field, and so it went from 200 people to like 600 or 700 because they added all these distances, and it was just about raking in the dough. And I was getting email blasts for the next year before I even finished the race.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
literally, I was still in the middle of the race, and I looked down, I was getting email blasts for 2024, and I'm like,
Wow.
and the rate had already gone up like $150 early bird.
Wow.
And so yeah, and there were just all kinds of issues, and I wasn't the only one that complained about. And then I heard this past year they had similar issues, so apparently they didn't work it out. But
Yeah. That's
yeah,
unfortunate. That's yeah.
yeah, it is. And I mean, people that want UTMB stones and they're they live in Canada and they don't want to go all the way to Black Canyons or something like that. Yeah, it's an 8-hour drive, and they can get there and get their stones, and you can run 100K and get a qualifier for Western. I mean, that's great. But I had a better experience at No Business than I had at UTMB Grindstone for sure.
Right.
So
Yeah, and you still get your Western qualifier at
yeah,
business
it
as
didn't
well.
cost me $600, or
Yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
So yeah, so Grindstone, and I actually ran GDR that spring, so I ended up getting 2 qualifiers in 2023, which obviously did not benefit me, but
Yeah, I can't use both,
my
unfortunately. I wish we could.
my first qualifier at No Business, actually, I missed it by a day because a friend reminded me, hey, you don't forget to put in for your lottery. And I'm like, I don't really care about Western. Well, I worked in a prison at the time, and you couldn't have cell phones, so when I had my cell phone that morning, um, she had reminded me, and I had to leave it in my car and totally forgot about it and got off work. And then the next day I remembered, and I was a day too late. I
Oh
wasn't able to put
man.
it. So I lost my first qualifier. And so running two in a year doesn't mean you get to put in two either. So
No, I
I'm only got 4 tickets, but I should have what, six, I think it is. So whatever,
oh
6 or 8,
gosh.
but
Yeah, be
whatever.
8, I think, right?
So yeah, anyway.
Yep. Are you
um,
in the lottery this year for the next
yeah,
race?
I,
Well, I
I
guess they
used
they already
my
did, but I guess yeah.
yeah, I used I just ran, gosh, my brain, Rim to River,
Ah, okay.
100. So I put in that one for 2024
How
or for
was
the
Rim to
2020.
River? Because I've heard it's comparable to No Business from several people.
Yes, I will say it is definitely comparable. His name is Brian too, with a Y. And yeah, he puts on a great race. I can't remember his wife's name, Sheila maybe, but anyway, they do a great race.
How
They, you
funny would
know,
that be if it was Brian and Sheila and Brian and Shelley?
well, that's I'm wanting to cross out their names, but it's that close. I know both their first names of the RDs are the same. But
That's
I
funny.
think Brian with no business is spelled with an I, and
Yeah.
Brian is with Rim Rivers with a Y. But either way, it's a great race. They actually, because of some construction, they had to hold it the same weekend that no business was going on, which was peak, you know, leaves changing
Right.
season or week or whatever, and it was beautiful. And I actually was going for sub 24 there as my first sub 24 because it has about the same elevation gain, about 12, 13,000, and it's a very runnable. Carl Meltzer was there. And anyway, had some issues going into that race. I had actually ran Uwari 50K the week before and
Oh
ended up
wow.
getting a UTI, I think, or either
Oh
rhabdo.
man.
I don't know really what it was, but symptoms looked to be like rhabdo. I actually placed third overall in that
At the
race.
50K?
Yeah,
Wow.
I was, seated to be top, to podium, and there were some fast guys out there, and I actually was able to pull it out the last probably 10 miles. So got third overall there, and
That's awesome.
I kind of didn't want to risk my sub 24 at Rim to River. Well, apparently I got dehydrated because I was running so fast and not, taking enough electrolytes and all that good stuff. Well, ended up having some issues when I went to the bathroom and was seeing brown and all the bad things. So I went to the urgent care, and they did a culture and ended up losing my results before they got back to me before the race. But ended up putting me on an antibiotic for a UTI. And so I took that, and, symptoms were clearing up. But the day of the race, that morning, everything was looking good. I was clear. Everything looked good. And about 7 miles into the race, it's pretty runnable. I peeled off to go to the woods and use the bathroom. And when I was using the bathroom, I looked down and it was like espresso. And I was
Oh my
like,
gosh.
oh my gosh, this is not good. So much for sub 24, so much for me even probably finishing this race now.
Yeah.
Now I've got to make it to an aid station so I can DNF myself. And I dialed back my pace. A lot of the guys I was running with were going for sub 24s as well. And so I was going by my pace plan was sub 24. B plan was sub 26 because my fastest 100 miler was 26:30 something, and that was at no business my second
Okay.
year. So I was trying to at least PR if I didn't get a sub 24. So I was running with some guys, and he's like, "Yep, you're done. Go ahead and call it a day. Go volunteer. It'll clear up, but you're done. Just drink a lot of electrolytes." And I just going from the mental focus of not only are you not going to get a sub 24, but this is going to be your first DNF. Like I've never not finished a race, not
Right.
finished anything I've set out to do. I've fortunately been able to finish, even if it's taken me 35 hours to do it. And I did miss a 100 mile in there, but anyway. So anyway, I just started pounding electrolytes, and I wasn't going to see my crew member until mile 26. And I'm thinking that's a long ways to try to push yourself. So I just started drinking electrolytes left and right. And I talked with a physical therapist friend of mine who was in the race on the out and back. And he said, well, it could be that UTI clearing up, your body just kind of getting rid of blood clots and stuff like that. And the antibiotics that you're taking, he's like, um, keep an eye on yourself. But see, the thing is, I didn't have any of the physical symptoms of rhabdo, which is tenderness, nausea, all kinds of fever. I didn't have any of that. I felt great, other than what I was seeing with my eyes. And so he's like, just monitor it. So I started drinking electrolytes, started pounding chicken broth like at every aid station. I was just like, I'd carry a little hydro flask with chicken broth in it. And it was so hot, I had to
Huh.
basically wait for it to cool down anyway. And the color of, my urine started getting back to clear to pale yellow, and it would look natural. And but I felt great. So I just stayed on my pace, and I saw the guy that told me to drop out at mile 38. And he's like, "You're still running?" I was like, "Yeah, I feel great." And I ended up not only finishing sub 24, I finished sub 23.
Oh, wow.
And kind of find out that the guy that told me to quit finished 7 hours behind me. He fell apart. And so
Oh, no.
I don't know. I just grace of God for sure, because I was asking for healing during that. But I was like, please don't let, it's like one of those things when you don't feel what your body, it's not like I was feeling bad. And then for you to mentally say, I have to medically discharge myself from this race because of what I'm seeing. Now, given all that, I would not recommend people do what I did. It was not responsible at all. I mean, it was not smart to try to push myself
Well, you kept an eye
past
on
that.
it and were,
Yeah.
pounding the electrolytes and, taking it relatively smart considering. So, I mean, you
Yeah.
you did all right,
And
you know?
after I finished the race, I did go to the doctor, and they did a culture, and they found nothing in my system.
Good.
So
Okay.
all my proteins and everything were clear. So
So what was your time? You said it was sub 23. So what was your time?
I got 22:53.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yep.
Congratulations,
Yep.
man. Where did
So
that put you overall?
16th overall.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome, man.
So
Is that your
I think,
best?
yeah, Carl Meltzer finished sixth, I think. So
Oh,
I
wow.
was 10 spots behind him. I'll take it.
Hey, absolutely.
Yeah, that's my fastest time. Not my, and yeah, I think I'm my best place in a 100 miler. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. So top 20, I'll take it.
Yeah. Wow. So after that, now that was just the same weekend as No Business. So that was just a couple months ago, right?
Yeah.
In
Back end
October.
of October. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Now you've run a couple races since then. I know I've seen some pictures on Facebook and some 50Ks. I don't think you run any 100 milers since then, or has it just been like 50K, 50-mile distance?
I've done 250K since then. And I did this little jaunt around a guy's house that was 100 laps of 0.17 miles.
Oh
So
my goodness
roughly
gracious.
18 miles. And it had 3,000 feet of vert.
Really?
So yes.
On a 0.17 mile course?
Talk about death by a thousand cuts.
Oh, seriously.
Yeah, and the start is right up a hill. As soon as you start out of the gate, it's climb up his driveway, take a left on a little road, you get a little break, and it's down a ruddy, embankment, and then you zigzag through a little trail he's got, and then you turn around and do it again. It takes you about a minute and a half to do it.
Now, is
So
this a
it's like,
legit race or is this like a fat ass?
well, yeah, it's a fat ass cause it's free. I mean, he does it
Okay.
for donations. But no, they did
Wow.
timing and everything. It's on Ultra sign up.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I think it is. Maybe, yeah, is it? No, no, it's not an Ultra sign up. I don't think I get anything for that.
That's pretty
But
awesome, though.
anyway, it's all good. I
How'd you
finished
do there?
sixth overall on that
Oh,
one,
cool.
but it's limited to 20 people, and 13 finished. So
Ah,
you
okay.
you get a T-shirt if you finish, and
Nice.
usually the weather's crappy, and we had cold but dry weather, so
Okay.
it was great. But yeah, I did Misfit Island 50K on my birthday, which was 12/7. I placed second overall there,
Oh,
and then
wow.
I got a bib transfer for Fonta Flora 50K, which I did in 2019 and placed. In 2019, I placed first Masters accidentally, unintentionally, because I didn't know they even had a first Masters. But my goal was to beat that time and also beat the previous week's 50K time, which I finished in 5:13, and I came in 5:04 at Fonta Flora, so that was a PR there. But I placed second Masters, unfortunately. Well, third, I guess, because second place actually was first Masters, if that makes sense. You just couldn't have
Oh,
both
yeah, yeah,
awards.
yeah.
So even though I technically was third Masters placing wise, I was second because second place overall was 40
Right.
plus.
Okay.
So
Okay.
So yeah, but I beat my time there, and now I'm trying to come into January 2025 without runner's knee because I've run too many fast races. I'm not used to running 5 hour 50Ks on the trail.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
And I've got the Southern Tour coming up, 50K. I've got Millstone 50K again. And on top of all the stuff I did last year, I did 4 out of 5 of the Brutes.
I was gonna say we got to talk about that. We got to talk about that because I know. So for people that don't know, the Brutes Challenge is the Blue Ridge Ultra Trail Endurance Slam, and it's 5, right? 5.
Yep, 5.
5 routes that I believe the shortest is I think 55 miles and the longest is like 74. Is that right?
Yep. That sounds good.
Okay, so take us through that briefly, like how. Because I know obviously that was impacted by Hurricane Helene, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But what was the first one of the Brutes Challenge that you did?
So the first one I did in February, I believe it was. Yeah, February last year on the 24th. That was the Georgia Loop. So that is on the Duncan Ridge Trail.
And that's 55 miles, right?
Yeah, 55. 55, 58, depending on who's counting.
Okay.
Whatever watch records.
Right.
And that goes, it's partly on, the Cruel Jewel track and the Georgia Death Race, but Georgia Death Race uses a lot of Jeep road, where this is 100% on trail. It's all single track. And you've got Duncan Ridge, you've got the Bartram, and then you have the Appalachian Trail that you loop around. It's one big loop, one big 55-ish, mile loop.
Okay.
And that one was interesting because GDR, which is 74 miles and has,
like 16,000 feet of gain, I think.
16,000 feet of gain seemed easier. Actually, I finished it faster than I ran this race, if that puts it in perspective. Yeah. So I finished the Georgia Loop in 19 hours and 8 minutes, and I finished GDR in like 17 hours and 49 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it's got the
like 20 more miles.
Yeah, and it's got like 600 steps at the end of the race that you have to climb up at Vogel. Is it Vogel? No, Amicalola Falls. So yeah. So anyway, I'm like, I'd rather run GDR, and GDR was a unicorn race for me. I mean, I finished 14th overall, so that definitely was out of 250 people. So it was that was a unicorn race. I was hoping for under 20 hours, but I was not expecting sub 18. So anyway, so the Georgia Loop, and then and me and a buddy Tony did that together. His goal was actually to do but the Brutes Challenge, and I was going to pace him or be a safety runner for him on a couple of them, and kind of find out a lot of them were I was able, because I wanted last year to be more run ventures, because prices for races keep escalating. And now the days of $250 to $300 hundreds are gone. They're like,
oh yeah, 450.
Yeah, 450 early bird, and I'm thinking, yikes, I can only do one of those a year, not two.
Right.
Anymore. And so anyway, I figured more run ventures, and so I was going to do that with Tony in his preparation for, he was going to go do Tahoe 200, I believe, Tahoe Rim, 200. And so the next one we went to go do was SCAR, and that's 74 miles, and that is the acronyms.
It's the Smoky Challenge Adventure Run, SCAR.
There you go. Yeah.
Yep.
There you go. So that is roughly 16,000 feet of gain, I believe.
It's like, I think I had 18, like over 18,000.
Actually, you're right. I had 18 plus, almost closer to 19. Yeah. You're right. Yep. And that one was rough. Six of us started out, and I was the only one to finish it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it took me 28 hours.
Oh my goodness.
I ran the last 50K all by my lonesome. So it was there was some issues. Having too many people. 2 guys had just run Umstead 100 a week before. I don't know. They were just going out there for fun, but I don't think they realized how difficult that route is. Yeah,
because Scar runs like 100. That's tough.
Yeah, it does. And we did Nobo. So we did, the harder. There is some people, it's the same amount of elevation gain, but
Right.
the hardest section is at the end, after you get past Newfound Gap. But it took me to the brink of myself being out there solo in the middle of the night, 40-mile-an-hour winds up at Paul's Bunyan or whatever it
Uh,
is. And it's just like, I just wanted to crawl up and go to sleep on the trail. And I knew if I did, they'd probably find me dead the next day, because
what
there
time
was
of
just,
year was it you did this?
this was April. So,
Okay, so yeah, it can be pretty cold still.
well,
Yeah.
it was 19 degrees on the ridge when we started out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the week before it snowed up there. It actually, the through hikers that were coming in got stuck at one of the shelters there, and they got snowed in. And then all that snow melted and then swamped the whole trail. And so you had water aplenty on the trail everywhere you wanted it. It was there. It wasn't dry, but the problem is it made everything sloppy. So yeah, unfortunately, time wise, a couple of guys got behind and I had left them, and ended up, you know, getting a Newfound Gap where we had that's really the only place you can meet somebody. And
Right.
one of the guys that was with him had stopped and he was there. And I'm like, what are you doing here? You're behind me. And he's like, I dropped. And the other guys were about an hour behind me. And once they all got the Newfound Gap, I had already been there almost an hour. And I'm like, the sun's going down. I'm getting cold. If I don't move, I'm not gonna keep
Yeah,
going.
definitely.
And so I moved, I went ahead and I figured that eventually that, they would catch up, or either if we didn't finish together, we'd finish, at least three of us would finish within an hour or so of each other. And once they got the Newfound Gap, I think they weren't in the right headspace. And I think Tony, he knew he wasn't going to meet his time, and they just all dropped there. And I called and was like, "Hey, I'll wait for you." And they were like, "Yeah, we're already done." So
Oh man.
I forged ahead. Yeah, and it was 20. I just can't believe it took me 28 hours. My goal was sub 24, and to take 4 hours longer than I expected was a grind
It's a tough
for sure.
trail. Yeah.
Yes, very.
So
It like you said, it runs for 100, and you're self supported pretty much
yes.
most of the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
So
you got that one section from Fontana to Klingman's Dome. It's like 32 miles where you're completely
yeah, it's
unsupported.
32 miles, and
10,000
we
feet of
didn't.
gain.
Yeah, it's straight climbing,
Oh
and
yeah.
we didn't have anybody at Klingman's, and so it's actually I had
You
40
had to go
miles
40
until my
miles.
first,
Wow.
40 miles until I saw my crew, and then it was the last 34 solo.
Oh man.
So yeah, after that, I did Pitchell in July, and that's 65 miles, and I started off with a buddy, who was planning on doing an out. He was going to go for a double Pitchell. And
Nice.
if nobody knows what Pitchell is, it's Mount Pisgah to Mount Mitchell. And that starts out of on the other side of Asheville, south of
Right.
Asheville. And it's roughly 13,000 feet of gain,
That
but
sounds about right.
don't let that fool you, because
No.
the last 30 miles is 10,000 feet of that gain. So
Right.
it's very back heavy on the climbing, and it's all technical. And I started that out off with him, and he ended up having some stomach and GI issues where he could hold nothing down within the
Oh,
first 20 miles. And I'm like, dude, if you can't hold water down, you can't make it 45 more miles. So his wife was crewing us, and when we got to her, he told her the situation, and he's like, "So what are you going to do?" And I was like, "Well, I came to finish. I don't plan on coming back." He's
seriously.
like, "Really?" And so I took what she was carrying, everything I could carry, all my nutrition gear, and I packed it on me. And I was like, "Here, take the rest of this back to my car in Black Mountain, and I'll just figure out a way to get picked up." I don't really have a plan. I
Oh
know
my
a lot of
gosh.
people in the mountains, but to drive to where I needed them to meet me at Mount Mitchell was still an hour for any of them, and they would have to meet me at like midnight,
Oh man.
and my goal was a sub 20. And with that rate, with that course, you got to bank a lot of time on the front end, because it's like I said, it's all climbing on the back end. So you're going to lose all that time climbing. And when I kept running, I was waiting up for him. So I lost almost 2 hours slowing down, not keeping pace, because it literally runs like a downhill and then a big up. So it's like a bolt, you know.
Yeah.
And so you need to take advantage of the downhill. Well, anyway, I made up about 45 minutes, but not even 2 miles outside of leaving them, I rolled my ankle like in a hole, and it was like popped. And that was my
Oh
good ankle.
gosh. Oh
And it was that
no.
one where you feel that flush of warm feeling run through your body, and you're like, this is not going to be good later.
Right.
Keep So what did I do? I popped ibuprofen and I pushed for 40 more miles on it.
Gosh.
And yeah, needless to say, I ended up getting my wife to come pick me up. She drove 2.5 hours and crewed me from the last 20 something miles on the Blue Ridge Parkway. And when I finished, the fog was so dense you couldn't see 3 foot in front of your face. And we got stranded on the Blue Ridge Parkway for a few hours. And eventually, at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, she's like, I can't stay up here any longer. So we ended up finding a hotel. We had to safely drive back into Black Mountain. But fortunately, when I got to Mount Mitchell, that area is usually closed off. You can't go up past the
Right.
parkway. And so I'm thinking I've got to come down that road because I'm not doing trail back down after, finishing for like 4 or 5 miles. And thankfully, she ended up meeting me at the top. Like it was open. They had not closed the gates. But
Nice.
it took us 20 minutes to drive down 4 miles in the middle of the night.
I bet
And
with that fog. Ugh.
yep. And it took me 24 hours. My goal was under 24. It took me 24, almost 25 hours to do
Wow.
65 miles.
Well, after that ankle roll, goodness sakes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, trust me, my ankle swelled up, and it took me 6 months to get over that.
Oh yeah.
And then in August, the end of August, I did the Ring, which is the Massanutten. That's 71 miles, and that's about 18,000 feet of gain. And that is a fat ass. So fortunately, that is supported. And one reason is because there's no water on the ridge there. If you're not at a supported event, you have to run it in the winter time. Otherwise, you're not gonna be able to carry enough water. So because it's
Huh.
completely on the ridge.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's like 35 miles across the ridge. You drop back down, then you get back up when you run 35 miles, and then drop back down to the parking lot. So,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah.
Well, how did that one go? How long did that take you?
Well, if you don't run a 50K at Mount Mitchell the week before, it probably goes better than the way it did.
I would say so, probably.
I did a self-supported. Me and a few friends went and did about 8,500 feet, 50K at Mount Mitchell the week before, and that I felt that about 16 miles into that run, and completely fell apart with cramps, and I thought I was DNF. Got to an aid station, thankfully, and just sat there and was like, I'm going to sit here until the cramps go away or they pull me off the course. And so I sat there. I ate a whole can of condensed Campbell's soup, not diluted, right out of the can.
Oh man.
And within 5 minutes, the cramps were gone. Like they
Wow.
weren't ever there. And I ended up getting a second wind and ended up finishing in 23 hours and some change.
Nice.
So not quite my sub 20-hour finish, but the buddy I went there to run it with, he was, I think, 21 hours and some change. So
Okay.
he was struggled too. He realized that race was harder, and I realized that the terrain there, it's all boulders. There's not, once you get up on the ridge, it's all rocks, and there's nothing really runnable. And I ended up rolling both of my ankles multiple times during
man.
that course. And so it was, anyway, that one was they tried, they have another race, it's called the Reverse Ring. And so in the wintertime, they do the route in reverse, and they invite, and you have to do this one to be able to qualify for that one. And this one is you have to qualify for it. Like you put in your name, and you have to have put in a certain race as a qualifier, or they won't choose you. So
Interesting.
It's a very hard course. And when they invited me back, and if anybody's heard of the Massanutten 100, it's the same course, just they add about 30 miles of road to it. So
okay.
they invited me back for the one in February, and I said, yeah, I probably won't be back. And they're like, oh, it's nothing, it's snow. And I'm like, so you don't get to see the rocks you're sliding on. They turn to ice instead of, and it rained, and it was interesting. And then I was supposed to do the Foothills Trail, which would have been my final and fifth course of the Brooch Challenge the weekend of Thanksgiving or the weekend before Thanksgiving. And obviously, as we know, back in October, the beginning of October, Hurricane Helene did massive damage all the way from Florida to Tennessee and completely destroyed many of the mountains, the communities. I mean, just utter
Right.
devastation that is, it's going to take, it'll never be the same. I've seen some of
Yeah.
the areas. I've volunteered since then. And I know when we tried to do this podcast last time, I hadn't gone up there and actually seen the areas in person. Well, I've been since then to the areas that I used to run, and that was my training grounds. And the ones that I could access, it's bad. It's like I was at a campground, and I'm like, you can see where the river or the creek is supposed to be, and you can see that the path that was left was tenfold width, but the creek is still back to normal. So it's like you got all this exposed bedrock, and you can just look at it and tell it's not natural. Like it,
Right.
and trees are just in trees. It's
Yeah.
like toothpicks. It's crazy. And
Yeah.
so anyway, that course has been, because it went through South Carolina, which is that course starts at Occoneechee and goes to Table Rock Mountain, I believe it is. That 72 miles of the Foothills Trail, there's like over 140 bridges, anywhere from a footbridge to suspension bridges that
Oh,
have
wow.
been impacted. And so they haven't even really assessed a lot of that. They're thinking possibly just for the trees alone, they're looking at April, but that's of this year. But that, I mean, that's not counting bridges that have to be rebuilt.
My goodness. Yeah.
So, I mean,
Well, now
so
I know because we had talked about this before. Excuse me. Is, obviously the Brute Challenge is supposed to be done within a calendar year, within
yeah,
365 days.
365, which means I would have to finish it by February 24th of this year for the to be considered the 365.
Right.
Well, given a lot of times, people are like, well, it rained that weekend, or, I wasn't able to get the time off. I mean, there was nothing that I could prevent that's in my control or anybody's
Yeah.
control that would keep me
Hurricane
from,
Helene's a little different.
a 1,000-year flood and a natural disaster is a little bit different.
Right.
And than not, having ideal conditions, or just not going out. I mean, my goal, had I went on the 23rd of November, I would have finished it. It might not have been in the time that I, wanted, but I wouldn't have stopped
Sure.
unless I would have finished it. And technically, I think it's 32 hours is the time. Like that's of each of the courses. That's kind of what I think is a standard for if you do it 32 hours or less. Anything, I mean, they'll count it either way, but 32 and under is kind of like what the bar has been set
Okay.
for finishing each course.
So are you not going to be able to make an attempt in February because of the damage still, or are you?
Yeah, so I reached out to the guy who started the Brooch Challenge. He was actually going to crew me on that last one, and he said that he's willing to give an extension just because obviously of the circumstances, and nobody wants an extension. Whether I get my name on a website or not, I'm going to do it. I'm going to finish it. I'm not starting over. I'm not going to go back and be like, oh, I'm going to do all four. There's no way. If I just have to have a personal record that I finished them all, and I just know that I did it, and this podcast, at least has four of them that I've completed on it. My Strava will show that I've done them.
There you go.
Right.
There you go. Hey,
So
it's on
that's
Strava.
really, if it's not on the website, it doesn't matter. But I'm pretty sure Charles will, he's lenient on that, and he's like, just let me know when you go do it, and he's like, I'll be there. So
Nice. That's good.
But yeah, so yeah, this past year was pretty good. I finished a couple of podiums.
Yeah.
Got me some ultra sign up trophies. So that was
some
good.
Success for sure.
Happy, turned 45. So yeah, I mean, it's I got my first sub 24-hour 100. And yeah, this year I've already got it, a lot of it already booked up,
Nice.
what we're going to do. And, some of them are to be determined as far as the course goes, because 3 of the events are in the Mount Mitchell area. And they're out. Run Bum and Tanawa and all of them are out on the trails. They're, clearing them. They're assessing what they can. There are some, Mount Mitchell's actually open. You just can't get to Mount Mitchell because the parkway is closed. So
Yeah.
that limits, but a lot of the trails up there actually are intact because they're at such high elevation. They weren't impacted by the lower landslides and the
Right.
heavy rain. A lot of the rain came down from those mountains and saturated the lower level areas, and that's where the flooding took place.
Yeah.
So the higher elevation areas weren't really impacted. The problem is you just can't get to them because the lower level parking places and campgrounds are what got affected. So
Gosh.
it's just access to those areas
Yeah.
is makes it,
Well, you said
not
you have
possible.
most of 2025 already booked up. So what do you have coming up in 2025? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, so I just ran my first 5K, the first of January, the resolution 5K this past week. So that kicked it off
Nice.
and got fifth overall in that one. Didn't quite pull the podium on that one. There's some fast guys, and so then on the 18th of this month, I've got the Southern Tour 50K. That's another flat and fast 50K, which I hope my runner's knee doesn't affect me on. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
thinking that. And then on February, the first week of February, I've got the Millstone 50K. And I did that. That's another local race. I like the that's put on by Craig with Rock Hill Striders. He volunteers a lot at the Tonawah races. He's a really good guy. I met him at Hellbender 100 and volunteered with him a couple of times. And so I go and try to support that race. And so that's February. And then in March, I've got the Uwharrie Marathon. And that kicks off the Uwharrie training, monthly training runs that the RD puts on for the 100-miler in October. So every month they go out there and they'll provide an aid station at one of the crossroads, and they, it's a free event, and they provide everything there, and hopes to get people to sign up for the 100-miler and or the 50K or the 100K, and
Yeah.
yeah, they're great too. Megan and Ryan, they're awesome RDs, and then the 22nd of March, I've got the Heartbreaker 50 miler, which that one is a to be determined route. So that's going to be, it's put on by Tanawa, and that's going to be, part of Mount Mitchell area, but they're going to have to reroute it to stay on the lower sections.
Right.
And then I'm going back. I haven't got anything lined up for April, but then in May, I signed up for the Hellbender 100, and that's
Okay.
they said the course may be altered, but there's still going to be 20,000 plus feet of elevation gain there. So
That'll be a tough one.
that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
That there's nothing out there that's easy in that area. And then I ignorantly signed up for Quest for the Crest 25K, not the 50K, but the 25K the week after.
Oh wow.
So I'm a Run Bum ambassador, and we get discounts. And I'm like, I've already got a lot of races signed up for when these other races are taking place. And I said, well, in order for me to kind of take advantage of it, I need to sign up for something. So I signed up for it. So
Wow.
it may not be, I may end up volunteering. Who knows? But we'll see what happens. And that's going to be to be determined on the course as well. And then I was planning in October, using the summer for training and probably pick up some run ventures and stuff like that. Nothing officially signed up for. I was planning on doing Pinhoti with a friend, and he ended up signing up for Mohican 100 for his spring, and he wanted to do Pinhoti, and I'm like, well, I don't want to do another Western qualifier since I can only use one, because I'm planning on finishing Hellbender. If I don't, I can pick up Pinhoti as a Western, but
right.
if you've already run one Western in a year and qualified, you don't want to not use that for another year because you don't want to get burnt out on.
Exactly. Yeah.
I like to run different races. So I was going to use Pinhoti for a year. I wasn't doing Hellbender or another one. So I went to go sign up, and it was like early bird was $4.25. And I'm like, yikes, I don't know if I could do that right now. And then I found out he's not signing up for it, and he's going to sign up for no business.
Okay.
And I was like, he's like, do you want to do no business? And I'm like, well, I've done it twice, but I like no business, and maybe I'll go for a sub 24 there. Maybe I'll
Yeah,
do a PR, get that 1 day buckle since they offer that. And
that'd be nice.
so anyway, I went to go sign up for it New Year's Eve. As you know, it's a New Year's Eve sign up, and got the banner pop up that said registration is pushed off till February 1st due
Yeah,
to, of course, the Blue Heron. They're trying to get their permit probably from Blue Heron, I'm sure, aid station in Kentucky. And I'm like, just they just don't.
I know.
I hate it. I hate it for them. I really. I know. I've heard Brian. He's like, they didn't even think they were going to have it again because of all the stuff they have to go through. And I'm just like, why do people have to be like they don't want anybody there? They don't want
I
the
know.
race to get. And like,
And it's like this race
yeah,
happens every year now for like
it
the
happens
last
every
like
year. It brings
8 years.
to the area. I mean, it brings people out on the trails to go back at other times of the year to enjoy
Yeah.
the space that you have. It's not yours, that like it's their personal backyard. I'm like, it's nature. It's the state. That's the taxpayers. I mean, and anyway, I guess they're afraid that it's going to be commercialized, and it's going to be the events are going to come in every time you turn around. And I'm just like, anyway, so I'm hoping for that one. So that's kind of like where my year is up until May, and then I skip
Yeah.
until October, and I really don't have anything else planned until then. I try not to plan too much because I like to leave a little flexibility, but sounds like I've got a
You got a
quite
pretty good
good
schedule. Yeah.
stack calendar there. So yeah, but yeah,
Well, a lot on the
that's
plate,
me.
and it's going
Yeah.
to be interesting to see. I hope you can get that last Brutes challenge done at some point as well, and get knocked that out, because I know that's a big goal, and that's pretty epic. I know there's not a lot of people that have done those in one calendar year, but obviously with Hurricane Helene, that kind of screwed that up a bit. But awesome that they'll let you still get it done and kind of give you some leeway because of that devastating storm. So, but yeah, hopefully I'll see you out at No Business too. I'm not going to be running, obviously, but I hope to maybe come back again and hopefully have some athletes out there to coach and out there. And just, I love being part of that race. It's such a good race.
Yeah, that's a great race. And yeah, with the Brutes, I think only 13, maybe less than 15 finishers um since it's come about. So I don't know how many years it's been going on, maybe 5 or 6, but so it's only
Yeah.
a handful of people that's finished it. And I know some people have, even the guy that I told you I ran Rim to River with, he actually was one of the finishers, and I looked him up, and he actually told me it took him 3 times. Like, he restarted 3 times before he finished it. And
Oh, wow.
I said, good for you, because I'm not doing that. I mean,
That's a
just the logistics and all the issues that I had, and the like, that right there in itself was enough for me. Like, I don't want to come back and do this stuff again. So anyway, yeah, hopefully, No Business will take place, and I'll see you out there, because
yeah.
yeah, it's a great event. I think we got some guys going back for a double buckle. So, and I had some friends that ran it and did a sub 24 out there, and yeah, it's just a beautiful race.
Yeah. Well, I got it on good word. It'll happen. It's just we're trying to figure out the exact weekend, but it'll
Yeah,
happen.
it's the time. They don't
Yeah.
know when the actual dates are going to be. So
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
one's kind of up in the air right now.
Well, Matt,
Yeah.
it's been awesome hearing about all these adventures, and you certainly have done a lot of races over the last, gosh, I don't know when it was you started doing these ultras. You said it was what, 2017?
I think yeah, 2017 was my first ultras. This was,
So
yeah.
you've been doing ultras now for 8 years. Goodness.
Yeah, it's crazy. Another year.
I know. Right? I know.
Another year has ticked by.
But you seem to be getting faster as you're getting older. You seem to have more podiums and getting better, and that's awesome, man.
Yeah, I hope I can keep doing this when I'm 65. That's
Absolutely.
podiums aside. I mean, if I can keep moving at 65, when I see a lot of these guys out there, and they're like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you can do it," and I'm like, "Well, you know, I hope so. I hope I can keep with the mobility, and keep moving, because I love it.
Yep.
It's something about just getting out there, being with the environment and the people. And I remember going to these road races and stuff. You'd get you go run through your finisher chute, grab your banana, your fleece towel, your medal, off to the the food table. You grab your food, and then you're like in a group of people of 3 or 4,000, and then you stand there and then you leave, and then at ultras, these local ultras, I'm there until they almost shut down sometimes. It's
Yeah.
like it's a different experience.
Oh, the community is great.
The community, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely.
So,
Everybody sits around, hangs out, helps
yep.
each other out. It's just the best community ever. I love it.
It's funny because my wife, because she doesn't go to all of them with me, and she'll say, so when did you finish? And I'm like, I don't know, 4 hours ago.
She's like, why aren't you home yet?
What are you doing? I'm like, I'm hanging out.
Yeah.
So anyway,
That's great.
thanks for having me. It's been a joy. I'm glad we were able to work out the technical difficulties this time.
Definitely.
So,
Definitely. No, it was good. So I appreciate you coming on, Matt. Look forward to seeing how 2025 goes for you. But if it's anything like 2024 finished up, I'm sure it's going to be a good, successful year for you, and wish you the best. Thanks for coming on, man. It's been awesome.
Sounds good, Stephen. Thanks again, man.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Adventure Jogger, please consider joining our Patreon and be sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok for more content like this. Without your continued support, we would not be able to produce this type of content. So thank you so much to everyone that has listened, followed along, subscribed, liked, commented, you name it, donated on Patreon. Thank you.